November 1979, Toronto, Canada. Wolfgang Draghi was just another guy from Don Andrews' social circle of far-right extremists. When Draghi was a kid, he was constantly picked on because of his German accent. The memory of the war was still fresh. He wasn't a great speaker or a sophisticated ideologue, but he was passionate about the cause, and other Nazis found him likable enough. When it comes to politics, Draghi word for word repeats modern alt-right talking points, except 40 years ago. "I am not a white supremacist," he says. "We are racial nationalists whose eventual goal would be the creation of an exclusively white state for those wishing to live in an area among their own kind." He was on some Napoleon complex, maybe because of his height, commented Arne Polly. That's a mean thing to say, but yeah, Draghi was a height cell. Perdue first met him in Toronto, and as he always did when he was trying to impress, Perdue introduced himself as a veteran soldier and talked about his mercenary work in South and Central America. He never outright said that he was a covert government operator, but he gave the impression that he had connections in the Central Intelligence Agency. Perdue was very concerned about Cuba's expanding influence and how Dominica would make a good platform for an invasion of Grenada, or it might make a good mercenary target on its own. They said they were considering, instead of going to Grenada, going to Dominica, Draghi would later recall. He assumed that there were powerful people behind the operation. Draghi liked the Texan, and he liked the plan. From now on, he would become Perdue's second-in-command, and his first assignment was a recon mission to Dominica. So he purchased a plane ticket. Sometime later, a couple of Las Vegas businessmen sat down next to Draghi at the hotel restaurant. They introduced themselves as Carlton Van Gerder and Bob Goodman. Goodman was a Nevada Department of Tourism official. Van Gerder was in the gaming industry.
Remember, no Russian.
No, not that kind of gaming, you silly. It was the early 80s. Van Gerder was building casinos. He was trying to open a casino on the north shore of the island, but the Dominican government was refusing to cooperate. Draghi said he might have a solution. Perhaps the government would be more receptive if there was a change in leadership. Perhaps the change could be hastened by supporting the opposition or even staging a coup. Van Gerder wasn't about to get involved in a military coup, but he did invite Draghi to Las Vegas to meet some people. And this was how an ideologically fueled strike against communism became what is essentially a Grand Theft Auto side quest. The main objective was to make a lot of money by exploiting the suffering of some of the poorest people in the region. And the key to everything was a man named Patrick John. Operation Red Dog, Chapter 3. Some of my best friends are black. In the early 70s, everyone in Dominica was talking about an ambitious young union organizer, Patrick Roland John. He was a good and energetic speaker who could work a crowd. He played cricket and represented Dominica in soccer. Despite being very short, he was a successful athlete. The BBC described him as small in stature but large in ambition. Another powerful height cell. His campaign used a brilliant slogan that played both on his size and his humble origins, and the slogan was, "The Little Man." So Patrick John became the Prime Minister. He also made himself Minister of Security and Colonel of the Dominica Defense Force. Colonel Patrick John. That sounds less impressive once you realize that the island had no standing army. In the event of war or other emergency, the military responsibilities were supposed to be fulfilled by the police. Dominica was a quintessential banana republic. The island's unimpressive economy was reliant on a single crop vulnerable to bad weather. And this was kind of what happened. The banana harvest was lost to disease, which was blamed on the failure of the government-appointed Banana Board to provide the necessary chemical sprays. The pressure was on. Patrick John was getting desperate. He could not solve the economic puzzle and became increasingly autocratic as his policies failed. Dominica had a knack for attracting unconventional and scummy investors, and in 1975, a Barbadian arms dealer named Sidney Burnett Alleyne negotiated an agreement to build an airport, a hotel, and a refinery that would supply South Africa, thus helping the apartheid regime evade sanctions. Barbados is another island country in the Caribbean. Its population is about 3 times larger than Dominica's. The agreement was met with outrage in Dominica and then faltered when French police seized a yacht off Martinique. It had been chartered by Burnett Alain and was full of weapons meant to help overthrow the government of Prime Minister Tom Adams of Barbados. After doing time, Alain picked up where he had left off like nothing happened. He hired a British mercenary to draft an invasion plan for Barbados that involved 350 men who were to assemble in Dominica. His intention was to install Patrick John as Prime Minister of a united Barbados-Dominica state. It's like something from Crusader Kings 2. And once again, the plot was discovered by the authorities. Then, the Dominican opposition revealed that Patrick John had secretly negotiated a pact with a businessman from Texas that would have given close to 1/10 of the island over to a foreign company for just $100 a year. Doesn't seem like a good deal. Anticipating the protest, Patrick John banned public gatherings, but the protesters came anyway. Thousands of them. It was Dominica's biggest demonstration ever. One by one, members of Patrick John's government abandoned him, and on May 29, 1979, he was more or less peacefully deposed. But this wasn't the end of John's story. Far from it. Soon the opportunity for revenge would present itself.